Right, again, thanks. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We're from Inverclyde TV.
Cool.
Thanks for being here today, Troy.
My pleasure.
First thing I want to ask about is how you got your start as a voiceover actor.
Man, I've got a really interesting journey as to how I got into this, and it's kind of it's encouraging because people ask me that a lot, and my story is different from Travis Willingham's story. It's different from Nolan North's story. It's different from everybody else that's working in this industry, which means that there's not one way to do it. Yeah. I was a musician, and I was working on an album with my band in the studio, and they were cutting drums or something that had nothing to do with me, and so I went wandering about the studio and walked in the door, and then just happened to be looking for someone. It was literally right time, right place. And I started doing that, and that led into doing this, and that led into doing this, and it's literally just been me tripping backwards and stumbling forwards ever since. So I claim a lot of luck and fortune, but you still have to get the gig, and you still have to work hard. And for me, it's just been about being open to learning on the job, a lot of on the job training. But at the end of the day, it's about just trying to be a solution to somebody's problem.
Right, excellent. What you're saying there, obviously you didn't have an acting background before you get started. You kind of just dived in at the deep end.
I mean, I think my parents would disagree with that. I've always been a performer.
Yeah.
And I've just tried to find different ways to channel that. Yeah. I mean, I was putting on plays on our fireplace, in our living room. So there's always been, I think that if you try to fit in, then you never stand out. Yeah. And so there's a lot of us misfit kids that, we're problem children, and our teachers would have much rather preferred us to not be as disciplinary cases as we were. But I think I've always been a performer, and I think this life just kind of found me, and I was fortunate enough to stumble into it.
Excellent. Well, going off from that, how did you find then the transition from just doing voiceover work to voiceover and mocap, playing the full range, everything for the character?
I think I was just it's right place, right time. The industry started to make this switch right around the time that I moved to LA, which was 2006. And at the end of 2006, 2007 is when Uncharted came out. And I'm not trying to pretend that Uncharted was the first game that ever did motion capture, because they clearly had done it for other games. They did it for Silent Hill. They had done it for several other titles. But there was something that happened in the industry when Uncharted came out that people understood the level of cinematic quality that a game could have, and Naughty Dog was the tip of the spear. Yeah. And it became, if you were in the industry at that time, everyone said we want to do it the Naughty Dog way. And what they meant was, we want to win the awards too, because Uncharted just swept the awards that year. But for me, having established myself a little bit like I did, I was Snow in Final Fantasy 13, and that kind of like rocketed me up into a leading man position within games. And then when I got The Last of Us, I wasn't really anybody. I'd done a bunch of bit parts, and I had a couple of lead roles, but for the most part, like I had done Tales from Vesperia, which for diehard fans was like a big deal. Yeah. But for the mainstream audience, it wasn't that a breakout role. It wasn't until 2013, so I've been doing this for 6-7 years. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I get The Last of Us, and then completely unknowingly, Ken Levine cast me in BioShock Infinite. And so pretty much everything after that became this huge thing. But we've seen mocap evolve from just being, wearing the suit and the volume, to the suit and the volume with the helmet cameras, and then likeness. And then, next thing you know, I'm standing opposite Kevin Spacey for Call of Duty. Yeah. So I think it's been this evolution of not only bringing the right performers and getting the right performances, but also matching that technology to that, and who knows what's going to go next.
Yeah. Talking more about like the actual inhabiting the entire character, like you're saying, like your actual facial recognition. Yeah. How much freedom then are you given to create the character? Do you get points? It's like, we need you to be like this, and then you just create the character, or are they really hands-on? And
yeah, I think that agency and the creation of the character varies between projects. There's some times where like, we need it to look like this. Like if you take Metal Gear Solid, you know, there's a established character that's there, and so you don't want to go too off the rails, because then people go, who are you doing? And that sometimes is more comforting, because you know, it's like bowling. You've got your rails here, and you can either go in the gutter, but you've got somebody that's making sure that ball goes down the lane. Same thing happens when you do the Joker. That's, to me, one of the most iconic characters in not only pop culture, but in literature. So you want to iterate that, and I think anytime you get an iconic role like that, your job is to simply move the character down the line, is to move the character forward, and hopefully teach the audience something different about that character that they didn't know before. But when you go to a character like Joel, which is something new, and we've seen the laconic, stoic, you know, hero, anti-hero, to show a different version of that character was born out of not only Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley's consciousness, but it was also born out of many, many conversations, especially with Neil and I, where the night before or 2 days before we would shoot, we would be on the phone for hours on end and discussing scenes and really trying to unpack who Joel was in those moments. And I think that the person that people know, the Joel that people know, is a result of those conversations and the collaboration of that character and the creation of that character.
I'm glad you mentioned Metal Gear there, because obviously Metal Gear Solid 5 you played Revolver Ocelot. What was it like working with Hideo Kojima?
Man, the first time you walk in the studio and there's Kojima, the coolest looking Japanese dude ever with his glasses. For a nerd like me, you're instantly, I mean, that's like Sergio Leone. That's like this, oh my God, that's the director that people emulate. And he's the most humble, unassuming, kind, gracious. He's excited that you're there. And so when we start working together, all he cares, he could tell you chapter and verse about every character, down to just the red shirt guy that's, you know, that gets killed in the first chapter. You know, he could tell you everything about those characters, and he's created this world that has been a part of video game culture for almost 2 decades. And that is an accomplishment that very few people in this industry can claim. And he could still go on, and he could still make, you know, Metal Gear games to this day. I love that he has the discretion to be able to go, let's end here. This is smart to go here, and there's other stories that I want to tell. Because I think there's a lot of people, especially in video games, that they're known for one franchise. And if you're a true storyteller, then you've got more than one story in you, and not just one story or multiple stories about one character, but multiple stories about multiple characters. And you saw what he came up with PT, and I love that he's the kind of guy that wants to collaborate with people inside of film, and not just that, but like Guillermo del Toro is the one director that's in film that I would say understands how a game is made. I heard a podcast where he said, if you set about trying to make a game like you make a film, you will fail, because they're two completely different things. So that first trailer that we see for Death Stranding, I look at that and I go, now I don't know. What are you capable of? What kind of stories can you tell? Because I think you see in the last Metal Gear, in 5, you really kind of saw where it was this super obscure. He's always been very artistic, very cinematic with his language, but even just the aesthetic of it is starting to kind of skew a little bit more Death Stranding. And so Death Stranding, to me, I think, is the evolution of those stories that he was telling with Metal Gear, and it's the evolution of who Kojima is as a storyteller and as a game maker and a filmmaker.
You're obviously very passionate about the pop culture in general and games.
I'm a nerd, brother.
And I was wondering if there's anything that you've ever seen, coming over the horizon, or you've been privy to something that's in development and you've actively chased a part, you've went, I don't care what it is, I want to be in that game, you know. If we're talking, say, working with a Kojima or something like that, is there anything like that you've seen or you've heard rumblings about and you've went, I'm going to be in that?
Yeah, there's several things, and I think that everything from, look, I want to make games. That's what I love. I don't view this as a stepping stone. I don't think that this is my audition to do film or TV. If those opportunities came, I would look at them and any chance that I get to act, any chance that I get to perform, I want to do that. But there's something to me, I remember, you know, I've been with video games for so long that I remember the only choice that you had before was, do you want an orange screen or a green screen? And that was it. And I've seen them go from, you know, 8-bit graphics, 16, 32, 64 to where we are now. I've seen the evolution of VR, and I believe that video games are the culmination of when cavemen were drawing on the walls. It's how we tell stories and how we want to relay experiences. That becomes our history. This is how we deal with death. This is how we deal with danger. This is how we deal with overcoming strife and obstacles. And there's one thing about reading a book, there's one thing about watching a show or a film that's very passive, and video games allows us to be active participants in that. So there's several opportunities that I've pursued, even so much as, you know, I was a part of Shadow of Mordor, which is my character is now canon in Tolkien lore. I mean, that's like, I could quit there, but I actively pursued wanting to be not only a part of the sequel, Shadow of War.
Well, that's out next month.
It's October 10th. It can't come fast enough, man. But to be able to work with that team on a higher level, that's the thing that really interests me now. Is I was fortunate enough to be the director of the performance capture with that, and I found that I have an affinity for that. I love being a part of that. Yeah. So working with that team and working with other teams to try to, in some way, proliferate the good tenements of creating characters and telling good stories that I've been fortunate enough to do with other developers, and being able to share what really works with other developers, with other studios, and try to help them along. That's what I passionately pursue. Yeah. That's what I want to be a part of. Excellent.
Just going off track for a moment. You said about still performing. You were in a band. You still playing in a band?
Trying to, yeah. So my first love was music, and I think I tried to go about it one way, and that's not the road that life chose for me. And it opened up this, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. But it has allowed me to kind of come back to that first love, and I got to sit down with 6 of my closest friends, and we went up to the woods north of San Francisco in the Bay Area, and we tracked a record over 10 days, and we've been working on it for like last almost 6 months now. Yeah. And we're finally going to drop it October 6th. So at New York Comic Con. The project's called Window to the Abbey, and the album's called Moving Around Bias. Excellent. And it feels like a good throwback to the 70s, like vintage reel to reel. So we're really excited about it.
Excellent. Well, it's going to be a really busy week for you, first week in October then.
Yeah, it's going to be a really big week. So we have the album dropping and Shadow of War dropping on October 10th. It's going to be big.
Excellent. Well, thanks for your time, Troy.
My pleasure, man. Thank you, Mark.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Right, so I just made
Dude, what's up, thank you, love. Old school Pac-Man cartoon tattoo. Bonus points, bro.
Excellent. Thank you very much for noticing.
Yeah, not the arcade game, but the cartoon, like Saturday morning cartoon.
I've had that tattoo for maybe about 15 years, and you're literally the first person to work out what it was, like straight away.
Bam. I'm a nerd, bud.
Is that one of the guys from the M&Ms?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
God, thank you, Tom. Sweet.
Right, we good?
Yeah.
We good? Okay. How long have we got?
10 minutes.
10? Right, okay. We'll need to rattle through this then.
Sure.
Right.